Kelly didn't just lose his fame, he ended up in a prison system that, according to his lawyers, is slowly trying to destroy him.
These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly.
Kelly got attacked in prison again, and from the way it happened, it seems like someone on the inside wants him permanently gone.
So they say that Kelly woke up allegedly on June 13th and he felt faint. He was dizzy. He started to see black spots. He got up and he fell.
Let's break this whole situation down. The so-called hit squad gets exposed. It all starts with a man whose time was already running out. His name was Glenn Stein, a terminal cancer patient and a high-ranking figure in the Aryan Brotherhood. He'd been locked up since 1982, gaining a reputation as one of the most dangerous men in the federal system. Stein had been serving time for murder since the early 80s and was infamous for violent behavior, even threatening to attack and kill federal officials back in 2015.
According to documents that R. Kelly's legal team just filed, they are alleging that there is a man, last name Stein, who is a gang leader, a big gang leader, and that he has provided a sworn statement to them that prison officials offered him his freedom to spend his last days free if he would allegedly kill R. Kelly.
But in February 2023, while he was locked up at a Colorado supermax, Stein claimed something unprecedented happened. In a sworn statement dated May 19, 2025, he said a Bureau of Prisons BOP officer named Ray Childress approached him. This wasn't their first interaction. Childress had already used him to order assaults and even murders inside the prison system. Stein admitted that during his 13 years being moved around different federal facilities, he'd been working for the BOP in exchange for perks like avoiding cell searches and getting the green light to move contraband.
There was an inmate that came forward before, and that stated that he was hired to kill R. Kelly. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah. I never believed that stuff.
At first, I never believed stories like this. But the February 2023 meeting was different. Childress showed up unannounced along with Warden Gutierrez and Associate Warden Stangl. No guards were around, which was highly suspicious and made it clear this was serious business. Knowing Stein didn't have much time left because of his cancer, Childress laid out what could only be described as a deal from hell. The proposal was simple but deadly. Stein would be transferred to FCA Butner in North Carolina where R. Kelly was serving his sentence, and his mission was to take Kelly out. In exchange, Stein would technically catch the charge for the killing, but any evidence against him would conveniently disappear, ensuring no conviction.
The way that this man says that this was supposed to go down is that he was supposed to kill R. Kelly, allegedly, and then he would get charged for it, and then he alleges that prison officials were going to fumble the evidence and ultimately bury the case. They would then allegedly transfer him to another location where he would be allowed to escape and stay free.
According to Stein's paperwork, the real motive was directly tied to Kelly's legal strategy. Childress allegedly called Kelly a rapist who preyed on white girls and someone the Aryan Brotherhood would naturally want eliminated. But more importantly, Childress claimed Kelly's high-powered attorneys were preparing to expose damaging information that could implicate high-ranking BOP officials and even senior DOJ figures. In short, Kelly was being painted as a direct threat to the Bureau of Prisons.
So R. Kelly's team is saying that all this is happening because they've been investigating whether R. Kelly's rights were violated throughout the process of his trials, and that they're alleging they recovered some information they were, and that this information was going to come out. So this is a response allegedly to that.
This so-called exposure was said to involve serious misconduct during R. Kelly's investigations. Things like illegal wiretapping of attorney-client conversations and outright obstruction of justice. According to Kelly's legal team, these intercepted communications were secretly shared with prosecutors, who then used them to pressure witnesses, like his ex-girlfriend Azriel Clary, into testifying against him, which ultimately led to his convictions. Documents claim that government insiders played a direct role in flipping key witnesses. One example given was when an informant allegedly showed Azriel private emails and phone records of Kelly communicating with another woman behind her back. This evidence supposedly pushed her to cooperate with prosecutors and become one of their star witnesses. And it wasn't just her. There were others too. According to Kelly's lawyers, it's a pattern. Whenever high-profile inmates start fighting long cases, suddenly there are plots against their lives. Stein, who openly admitted to having blood on his hands from his past, at first agreed to the mission. The transfer happened unusually fast. Within 2 weeks, he was moved from Arizona to FCI Butner on October 17, 2023. He was initially placed in the medical unit until March 2025, when he finally landed in Kelly's housing block. The moment he arrived, someone in a suit reminded him of his assignment, telling him straight up that he needed to finish what he came here for. For weeks afterward, Stein shadowed Kelly, tracking his movements and waiting for the right moment. Stein kept circling the block, watching Kelly's every move and plotting the execution. The setup was flawless. Living on the same unit gave him full access to Kelly's daily routine, his vulnerabilities, and countless chances to strike. But as time passed, something unexpected happened inside the mind of this hardened killer. Facing death himself, Stein started reflecting on his violent past. He described it as a change of heart. He decided that murdering Kelly just to cover up misconduct by BOP officials and government insiders was something he couldn't go through with. Instead of carrying out the hit on April 11, 2025, Stein flipped the script. He approached Kelly directly and told him the truth. "I was sent here to kill you. I told him how, I told him who was behind it, and I told him his life was in serious danger." The revelation must have been chilling for Kelly, realizing that the man shadowing him for weeks had actually been sent to end his life. But Stein's refusal to complete the mission created a new nightmare for those allegedly behind the plot. Now, two people knew the truth, the target and the hitmen who turned against them. Stein insisted time was critical. He offered to take a lie detector test, testify in court, and even name witnesses who could confirm his history of BOP-directed violence. He framed his decision as redemption, choosing to expose decades of corruption instead of adding another murder to his record. But pressure didn't stop. Lieutenant Teague allegedly kept contacting Stein, trying to push him to finish the job. Stein, however, refused to budge. That defiance, according to reports, put both men in even greater danger. Things escalated on June 6, 2025, when Kelly's legal team learned that a second Aryan Brotherhood member at FCI Butner had been approached with the same mission: kill both Kelly and Stein. The new recruit was David Keith Harris, another AB member expected to carry out the hits without hesitation. In his statement, Harris said Lieutenant Teague even discussed methods of execution, one of which involved poisoning Kelly's food, either in the chow hall or through commissary items. It was considered the clean option, since poison could easily be explained away as health complications, like Kelly's existing blood clot issues, or as an accidental overdose. The fact that commissary food was included in the plan made it even darker, because that meant Kelly couldn't avoid the risk simply by skipping cafeteria meals. But like Stein, Harris refused to go through with it. Instead, he told Kelly's lawyers about the solicitation. Soon after, Kelly's supporters began blasting the details on social media, naming Harris and highlighting the poisoning threat. The fact that Stein was now also a target suggested this had become a full cleanup operation, not just silencing Kelly, but eliminating the witness who could expose the whole scheme. The timing was no coincidence. Just days later, on June 10, 2025, Kelly's attorney Bob B. Brinley filed an emergency motion in federal court in Chicago, demanding his immediate release to home detention based on the assassination allegations. The motion included sworn statements from both Stein and Harris, who offered to testify and take polygraph tests. The filing accused 3 high-ranking BOP officials, including a warden, an associate warden, and another senior officer, of orchestrating the murder plot. No names were made public, likely due to pending litigation and privacy concerns. The motion argued that keeping Kelly locked up under such circumstances amounted to cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. BOP records did confirm Stein's transfer from Arizona to North Carolina, lending credibility to at least part of his claims. But the agency refused to comment, citing privacy and security rules. Prosecutors in Chicago hit back hard, dismissing the allegations as a wild fabrication. They pointed to Stein's criminal history and argued his story was nothing more than a fantastic and unserious conspiracy theory designed to manipulate the court. Still, the story didn't end there. Just 2 days after the emergency motion was filed and made public, the alleged conspiracy took an even darker turn. Kelly would soon be fighting for his life in a way nobody could have predicted. The poisoning attempt and the cover-up. On the morning of June 13, 2025, Kelly began his day in solitary confinement at FCI Butner. Officially, he had been placed there for his protection after the emergency filing, but his lawyers claimed it was punishment for exposing the assassination plot. What happened next would. The situation now stood at a crossroads. Either the events would validate some of the most serious allegations ever made against the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, or they would represent one of the most elaborate legal maneuvers ever attempted by a desperate convicted felon. According to court filings, what unfolded read like something straight out of a medical thriller. On the morning of June 13, 2025, Kelly reportedly woke up feeling lightheaded and dizzy, his vision filling with black spots. When he tried to stand, he collapsed, crawling toward his cell door before losing consciousness completely. Prison staff rushed to his aid but quickly realized they couldn't stabilize him on site. He was loaded onto a stretcher and transported by ambulance to Duke University Hospital in Durham, North Carolina. Kelly's legal team, however, claimed this wasn't a random health crisis. To them, it was an assassination attempt. They alleged that prison staff had deliberately given Kelly an excessive dose of his prescribed anxiety and sleep medications, triggering his collapse. The timing, just days after the murder plot allegations went public, was, in their eyes, far from a coincidence. Attorney Bo Brinley argued that while Kelly was in solitary, prison staff gave him his usual medications, but then insisted he also swallow an additional dose supplied directly by them. The next morning, Kelly collapsed, the same sequence that nearly ended his life. At Duke University Hospital, the situation only became more alarming. Tests allegedly revealed life-threatening levels of blood pressure and anxiety drugs in his system, alongside multiple blood clots in both his legs and lungs. His lawyers claimed the clots developed because the BOP had recklessly taken him off his regular blood thinners despite his medical history. Doctors reportedly recommended at least a week-long hospital stay and surgery to address the clots. But instead of following medical advice, Kelly's attorneys said BOP officers stormed into his hospital room and forced him back into solitary at gunpoint. Someone in the ambulance, they claimed, was overheard saying, "This is going to open a whole new can of worms." The danger was undeniable. Pulmonary embolisms, blood clots in the lungs, are among the deadliest medical emergencies, capable of causing instant death. Standard medical practice requires immediate, intensive care and close monitoring. By removing him early, Brinley argued, the BOP had placed Kelly's life in extreme jeopardy. On June 16-17, Kelly's legal team updated their emergency motion, now explicitly calling the overdose intentional and linking it directly to the broader assassination plot. Brinley stated, "They gave him a dose of medicine that could have killed him." connecting it to the ongoing allegations of corruption and cover-ups surrounding Kelly's original conviction. The accusations went even further. Kelly's attorneys said surveillance cameras in the prison would show him presenting his standard medications to guards, as required, and then receiving the extra pills that allegedly led to his collapse. Hospital records, they argued, would confirm both the overdose levels and his removal against medical advice. The desperation in Kelly's camp was clear. In an extraordinary move, Brinley appealed directly to then-President Donald Trump, asking for a presidential pardon. He claimed only Trump could save Kelly's life, since the courts were moving too slowly to stop what he described as a coordinated effort to eliminate him. When asked about the allegations, the Bureau of Prisons refused to comment, citing pending litigation. Federal prosecutors, however, responded quickly. Led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jason Julian, they dismissed the claims as outrageous, insisting the story was nothing more than a calculated fabrication. On June 16th, prosecutors formally responded, dismissing the allegations as nothing more than a fanciful conspiracy theory. They called the claims deeply unserious, arguing they disrespected Kelly's victims and that the court had no jurisdiction to alter his sentence. They highlighted Kelly's history as what they described as a prolific child molester and warned that granting him release could set a dangerous precedent for convicted murderers and terrorists alike. The court's response came quickly. On June 20th, U.S. District Judge Martha M. Paco denied Kelly's emergency motion. In her ruling, she stated that she lacked the authority to grant furlough or home confinement, even under extraordinary circumstances, and emphasized the absence of credible evidence supporting Kelly's claims. The denial was issued without a hearing, signaling that the court found the allegations too weak to justify further investigation. But the story didn't end with the denial. Regardless of whether the allegations were true or fabricated, they raised unsettling questions about the U.S. prison system and the vulnerability of high-profile inmates convicted of crimes against children. The fact that such detailed accusations, naming officials, referencing documented transfers, and backed by sworn declarations from multiple inmates, could even be put forward suggests either an unprecedented level of corruption or an equally unprecedented level of desperation and fabrication. Public reaction reflected that tension. On social media and in news coverage, most people were skeptical. Many saw the claims as a desperate ploy by Kelly's legal team to engineer his release through sensational stories that were difficult to disprove. Others, however, pointed to the well-documented history of violence against sex offenders in prison as proof that, whether or not officials orchestrated it, Kelly truly did face serious threats. In prison culture, certain crimes carry an automatic death sentence. At the very bottom of the inmate hierarchy are those convicted of crimes against children. Kelly's convictions placed him squarely in that danger zone, making him a target of what inmates call prison justice. And the violence wasn't new. Long before the alleged murder conspiracies of 2025, Kelly had already faced brutal retaliation behind bars. On August 26, 2020, while he was still awaiting trial at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, MCC, in Chicago, he experienced firsthand the dangers of being a convicted sex offender in federal custody. That morning at around 9:45 a.m., fellow inmate Jeremiah Shane Farmer slipped away from a prison employee and launched a violent assault. Farmer, a convicted Latin Kings gang member with teardrop tattoos symbolizing murders, had a history of extreme violence, including the 1999 hammer killings of two businessmen, 74-year-old Marion Lowry and 67-year-old Harvey Seeger. The attack on Kelly was sudden and vicious. Farmer stormed into his cell while Kelly slept on the lower bunk, climbed on top of him and began repeatedly punching him in the head and torso. The beating only ended when a guard intervened and ordered Farmer to stop. When he refused, the officer deployed pepper spray to break it up. Kelly escaped hospitalization, but suffered cuts, bruises, and head injuries. More lasting, however, was the psychological damage. The fear and paranoia that followed, especially worries about retaliation from Farmer's gang associates. For his safety, Kelly was moved into solitary confinement, while Farmer was transferred to another prison. What made the attack especially striking were Farmer's claims afterward. In a 104-page motion titled "The Government Made Me Attack R. Kelly," Farmer alleged that prison staff pushed him into the assault. He wrote that after arguing with a mental health professional at MCC, the staffer essentially dared him to attack Kelly, telling him, "Go do it then." According to Farmer, guards then followed him, allowed the beating to unfold, and only stepped in once Kelly had been hurt. The motivation, Farmer explained, was layered. He was angry about repeated lockdowns at MCC caused by pro-Kelly protests outside, which he believed deprived him of access to legal resources. He also admitted disgust for Kelly's crimes, writing in his complaint that Kelly was foul, and that his disgusting crimes have fueled his rage. This lined up with prison culture. Sex offenders often become scapegoats and punching bags for the frustrations of other inmates. For Kelly, the assault was another reminder that in the world of prison hierarchy, his crimes put him at constant risk. The system is so entrenched that sex offenders are routinely harassed, extorted, or attacked. Many end up in protective custody units, but even there they are branded as outcasts. In general population, their options are grim: check into protective custody voluntarily, or face the constant risk of beatings, stabbings, and sometimes orchestrated killings by gangs. Robert Sylvester Kelly's position is particularly precarious. Prosecutors branded him a prolific child molester, citing multiple underage victims as young as 13 or 14, along with his illegal marriage to the late Aaliyah when she was only 15. His celebrity status only heightens the danger. While fame might seem like a shield, it often works against him. High-profile inmates disrupt normal prison operations, trigger lockdowns, and create resentments among other prisoners who see them as trouble magnets. The 2020 assault on Kelly at MCC Chicago wasn't an isolated incident but part of a wider, well-documented pattern of violence against sex offenders in U.S. prisons. Prison gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood, the Latin Kings, and the Bloods all enforce the "no child molester" code in their own way. Sometimes it's genuine hostility, other times it's opportunistic, a way to justify violence while gaining clout in the criminal hierarchy.